Okay, it's just about ready to live stream. Just give me one. Should be done momentarily. Okay, it's just about. Okay, we're good.
All right.
You are good to start.
Okay, well, it is 5:04. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Before we jump in, is there any public comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, who is this?
Oh, hi, this is Cricket McCabe, head of Maple Street School. I just had a question for the board. I know that some of the Maple Street families have received an extra residency document from Winhall in addition to the previous two. And I think this one was asking about whether they moved here for the pandemic. And I was wondering if you could explain that to me so I can advise the Winhall families at Maple Street how to proceed with that document, please.
Okay. You want me to take this?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So, and correct me if I get anything wrong here. So my understanding is that Winhall has been told that we potentially do qualify for CRF monies for families who have moved to Winhall as a result of the pandemic. So I think the BRSU has put together that paperwork that has been sent out to all new families for them to fill out. And if they moved here because of the pandemic, they should check yes. If they did not, they should not. Which I think this is a separate form from the residency declaration because it's asking for different information. The residency declaration is based on someone who has moved to Winhall with the intent to remain here indefinitely, which is a separate question from whether or not that move was precipitated by the pandemic. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, can I just say it back to make sure I understand? So
Yeah.
as long as families have moved here with the intention of staying, if they declare that they have moved here as a result of the pandemic with the intention of staying, it will help Winhall in getting CRF funding, which will then be used to defray some of the challenges that you have in your budget this year. Is that correct?
Cricket, not necessarily. I think they're two separate issues. The first issue is, have they moved here in, due to the pandemic? And that is what I think Jennifer was addressing. And then the second question, which is independent, is do they plan to stay here indefinitely? Is that correct, Jen? Or do you see the two as related? I thought they were two separate issues.
They're separate issues. So someone can move here because of the pandemic, but only plan to stay temporarily, in which case they would not qualify as a resident. But someone could also move here because of the pandemic and plan to stay here. And then they would qualify as a resident and also meet the, satisfy the information that we're seeking to get CRF monies for families who have moved here because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So again, I'm going to say it back. Sorry, I'm so confused. Because again, I know that a lot of the Maple Street families have moved here with the intention of staying, but they did move as a result of the pandemic. I haven't seen the form because I'm not a Winhall resident, so I'm just responding to questions that I've received. So they should answer the form truthfully, but when they say that they have moved here as a result of a pandemic, it will not put their residency in jeopardy. It will instead be supporting Winhall.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Assuming.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I just have one before we start, because I think this is the only time that I can really do this. I just want to make an adjustment, a request to the board that we, there's something that I think is a little bit confusing on the agenda itself. And so I'd rather just put it out there. On number 5C, where it says enrollment, including update on status of paperwork to date, I'd like to recommend to the board that we include the discussion on the paperwork to date during agenda item 5E when we're discussing the residency review.
Okay. Okay. And actually, I'm just wondering, with regard to Cricket's question, if I'm assuming if families have filled out paperwork that needs to be corrected, are they able to do so?
Sure, they could contact Celeste and tell her that they did not complete it correctly and they need another form, or they can print out the form that they received, identify that they completed it inaccurately, and to update it.
Okay.
Either of those are very viable options.
Okay. So I agree with moving 5C to the discussion included in 5E.
Yeah, just the part on the status of the paperwork. The enrollment is completely fine to stay. It was just the second part, because I think that should be discussed in executive session.
Okay.
As there's personally identifiable information there.
Okay.
Okay.
Review of norms. Dean and Meredith, I don't know if you guys have printed out the agenda, but would you like me to read them?
I have but sure, yeah.
Okay. As a board, 1, we will assume good intentions without judgment. 2, we will engage in open, respectful discussion where everyone has a voice and all ideas are considered. 3, we will keep a purpose serving Winhall and focusing on education and taxpayer needs. And our vision statement is to support each child's intellectual growth and academic success while encouraging creativity, independence, and responsibility to self and others. Okay, moving on. Recommendation to approve the minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Say
Aye.
Aye.
Any discussion? None. Okay. Then I will move that we adopt the minutes of our October 20th, 2020 school board meeting as produced in the agenda packet. Do you have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Great. Thank you. Okay. Randy.
Okay, so the first 2 agenda items under my report are that I need to go through 2 approvals with you. So as you know, when there's these are both mandated required policies. We did check with VSBA to confirm that you as a non-operating still need to adopt these, and they let us know that you did. So the first policy that I'm asking you to approve tonight, I don't know if you remember this, but there's a 2-step process. First meeting, you approve the policy, and the second meeting, you adopt it. And after the second meeting is when it becomes one of your policies. So the first policy is a mandatory electronic communication policy between employees and students. And so, again, it outlines a policy and a procedure that needs to be followed within our schools. Part of the and for any of employees, and you do have people kind of work with your students. So I've developed the procedure that goes along with this, but I'm seeking your approval of this policy.
I have.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I move that we adopt the policy.
It's an approval.
I move that we approve the policy.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Now, do you want to have discussion now? Usually you do the first thing and then have discussion and then decide.
I would like to have discussion. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So now's the time. I just wanted to make sure that we.
Thank you. That always confuses me. So what I was going to say is I have some edits, which Randy, I'm happy to follow up with you one-on-one. It's not substantive changes, but it's more for instance, terms that are defined are not consistently capitalized throughout thereafter that I kind of flagged.
Yeah, so we have to approve it as it is. So if you want to, we've gone to VSBA for some typos and asked them if they would update it. So we don't have the authority to make some of those changes, even if they're basically typographical. So what we've done with other boards who've raised questions around typos is that the boards approved it with the expectation that the VSBA will update the typographical errors that are in the documents that they're asking us to approve.
Is it worth me communicating the typos that I've flagged, or should I trust the VSBA is going to?
No, I think it's appropriate. I mean, we can talk about that afterwards. If you've got them already marked and you would like to do that yourself, that's fine. Okay. But we don't have the authority to make the changes to it.
Got it. The one substantive question that I did have is Roman numeral 4, enforcement responsibilities, capital B, employee communications violation of this policy. It says, in the event an employee sends an electronic communication that is inappropriate as defined in this policy, or that violates the procedures governing inappropriate forms of electronic communication to a student, the student shall, or the parent, student, or guardian may submit a written report of inappropriate communication to the principal, so on and so on. How is that enforceable? Like, I'm just, and it's curious to me that it's mandatory for the student, but only permissive for the parents of a minor child.
Yeah, legally speaking, shall and may are two very different things.
Exactly, but and it puts the onus on the student, which so I was just curious how that, like, what's the mechanism for enforcing that?
Well, I think that the intention, and I could be wrong because I didn't write it, was that the parent may do it on the child's behalf.
Okay.
So that the parent isn't required to do so, but they may on their behalf. Okay.
But the student is required to. So that was, I mean, it seemed weird that the onus is on the student and the student shall, because it may not be possible for a young student to meet that requirement.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got almost, because you haven't finished it, but unless Celeste posted it early, which is possible, an administrative procedure. I think that if you have a question, you can certainly reach out to VSBA and ask them about why they use those terms.
Okay. That was the only substantive comment that I had. And Dean or Meredith, I don't know if you guys had anything.
I'm just curious because I believe this is the same policy that the BRSU board adopted. We had already approved it, but we officially adopted it last night. Just out of curiosity, if the BRSU board adopted this policy, what would happen if one of the individual boards didn't?
Yeah, we haven't, these are mandatory for the state. So if a board said they're not going to approve or adopt a mandatory policy, I would go to VSBA and talk to them about the fact that the board is refusing to adopt or approve the policy and take it from there. I haven't had that happen before, so I would go.
No, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I would go to them and let them know that one of my boards is refusing. They would probably contact your board chair and discuss it with them.
I think Dean is stirring the waters here. Any other comments?
I did have one. I'm trying to find the exact.
Okay.
I can't find the exact paragraph and subsection right now, but if I find it later, I'll send it to you, Jen, or to Randy. But I would move that we approve the policy.
I'll second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, so the second one is an incredibly long, complicated Title IX policy. This is also required. It went into effect on August 14th. I can tell you that at the BRSU, we've taken this incredibly seriously. We have a Title IX coordinator. We have a Title IX investigator. Those two individuals, as well as myself, have probably attended 10 hours of training on this. We've had our entire leadership team trained on Title IX processes and procedures. So we are prepared, and we have processes in place in order to implement this. I'm aware that there are definitely typos in this, and we have other boards that have already communicated to the SBA about them. Feel free if you'd like to do so as well. But that's what I got on that one.
Okay. So I'm just looking to see if I had any substantive.
I'll move that we adopt it so we can discuss.
Approve.
All in favor, say aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Approve,
Aye.
not adopt, approve. They're both words that start with A. Aye.
Okay. Yeah, I think I just did this out of order, but I'll follow up the SBA.
Okay.
All right.
Move that we approve the policy.
Didn't we just?
Yeah, you didn't have to vote. You've already done this, so you can just vote. That's fine.
Oh, I thought we were having discussion and then moving it again. No?
Go ahead. Dean moved it the second time.
Second.
I will second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So the next agenda item is an update on enrollment. You can see we're still at 29 students over budget. We haven't seen a significant amount of movement recently. So I think just this is more informational for you than anything else. So, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk about it if you had any questions or wanted to discuss enrollment at all at this point. You good?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so Sue is here to discuss FY21 anticipated budget. So I don't know, Sue, if you just want to jump in and sort of do a quick overview.
Sure. So we've sort of talked about your numbers already, and you guys are already aware of the deficit situation that we're in. If you look at packet page 30, you can see right now we're looking at a deficit of 469, which is down a little bit from what we've been talking about. So you know that we're constantly tweaking our numbers as we get more information from how much things are going to cost for us this year. And right now, the enrollment, although the final count stayed pretty much stable from when we last met, there are some shifts on where those kids are. So that changes the costs up a little bit. So for example, we have some students who might be attending Tech Center at BBA. And so we have a reduction of costs at BBA. We have some students that recently moved in and are attending Floodbrook. So Floodbrook costs a little less than BBA does. So there's some shifts in those tuition costs. And that's mostly why you're seeing the decline. And also keep in mind that we haven't finalized anticipated yet, right? So there are still services that we haven't necessarily finalized the invoices on, so we don't know for sure how much those costs are going to be for the year. Trying to think if there's anything else that's really out there. I think the only other thing that would really be out there is the cost for transportation. So the cost for our 2 bus drivers that work for the BRSU, and we bill Winhall for those for driving those buses. Those costs are down a little bit. The number of hours that those bus drivers are driving are down a little bit. And then, of course, there's the benefit question. Right now, we're in open season. Staff have the option to change their benefit elections. and with a new state contract that was negotiated for healthcare, there's always potential for increased costs with staff benefits. So that's not finalized yet, and hopefully we will have final numbers for you when we vote the budget in January. So any questions on the numbers?
And you make them smaller.
I could try, Dean. Well, tell me, are you looking at it on your phone? Come on.
Actually, there's some numbers I'd like to make larger and a few I'd like to make smaller, and I'll let you know.
So Sue, on page, I believe it's 30, where the budgeted balance projected as of June 30th, 2021 is negative 469,263.
Right.
That is before we would move any money over from the tax stabilization fund, correct?
Right. You wouldn't move any money this year. So this is just an anticipated fund balance at the end of this fiscal year. We wouldn't move any money this year because that money is strictly for tax stabilization. So the next time we would intend to stabilize the tax rate would be for FY22. So that's when we would draw from that fund.
Okay. So I guess I was looking at June 30th, 2021, but that is the end of FY21.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Sue.
Sure.
So then the next agenda item is a residency review, and given the fact that we're talking about some identifiable information for families, I would request that we move into executive session for that, and then we'll come out of that executive session and then go back into executive session for the VSA Title I 313 executive session. Okay.
Maybe, would it make sense to go through items 6 and 7 and 8? Or at least 6 and 7 before we go into executive session, and then do, you know, both versions of executive session kind of sequentially?
Yeah, I think that's fine as well, if that's what you'd like to do as board.
That's fine.
Okay.
Fine with me. I don't know if that helps
that's
at
fine.
all.
Okay. Does anyone have any board updates? I will just say I've heard anecdotally that the independent schools, to varying degrees, are working on, you know, what they feel they can do to assist Winhall. There's certainly a spectrum there, and you know, my recollection is that when Randy, Sue, and I met with them, I think it was in September, we discussed that we would be really discussing the budget at our December meeting. I think that message has been heard, and I would expect that there would probably be something more substantive coming up in advance of the December meeting. So that's my only update.
Have we gotten any specific notions about what that would entail, or is it pretty vague?
I think the best way to describe it right now is somewhat cooked. And I think they're, you know, what any school might want to do, I think, is somewhat contingent upon what the other schools are doing. So I think they're in communication.
And if we hear anything before we develop the budget that's in writing that we can use, we will. And if not, we'll develop the budget with the information that we have. And we'll make a recommendation to you at that time. So we'll see where things go for the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
That sounds
Sorry?
vaguely promising. Right?
It's hard to know until it's in writing.
It is really hard to know.
Very vaguely promising. Are they coming to the table?
We don't have anything right now, Meredith. So until we have something in writing with, something that indicates that they are, basically attesting that they will do something financially for Winhall, there's nothing we can do with it. So we'll be waiting and we'll see. Sue will be building, and hopefully at some point there's a point of readjustment for her. And if not, we will build and make a recommendation to you.
I'm sure Sue would like to build the budget only once.
Oh, you're on mute. Sue, you're muted.
Sorry.
It's never only once.
It's already built. It's constantly moving, so it's not a problem.
All right. Agenda items for next meeting.
We'll give you a budget draft.
Okay.
There was something that I read about the waiting study. Is that something that we're going to discuss?
Yeah. So I would tell you, I was contemplating whether I would say that at board update or not. We won't be discussing it until we have more information. But if you have not read the waiting study, which is well over 100 pages, and incredibly complicated, but you're all brilliant. So, but if you're not familiar with it, I would strongly suggest that you do read it over. The Joint Fiscal Office right now is updating numbers. It's built on modeling from FY18. They're updating numbers in districts because of mergers. So we're hoping to have that. I am planning on probably in February or March doing a presentation to all boards about the waiting study. So you'll be hearing something more specific from me, but it will be a hot topic for the legislature. And at this point, I know how you all feel about the current funding formula and how that impacts Winhall. I will say to you that the one that is being discussed at the state level as a result of the waiting study is not any more favorable to Winhall. So, however, this is a very, very politically hot topic right now and will continue to be.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you
sounds great too.
Yeah, I know. I'm full of really jolly news.
You're full of all. Yeah, that sounds good.
If you can't track down the waiting study and you'd like a copy, feel free to email me and I'll get one to you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other agenda items? I think the budget will probably consume most of our time. Okay.
Do you want to do public comment now, Jen?
Sure. If there's any public comment to be made, why don't we do that now before we enter into executive session? All right.
So I guess we probably shouldn't do this as far as changing the agenda, but I know we've got a couple folks here for our second executive session. And I don't know how the board feels about swapping them.
Doing item 9 before we do item 5?
Correct.
That's fine with me. Dean and Meredith?
Yeah,
I don't care. That's fine.
Okay.
All right. Shall I move that we go into executive session?
Yes, you're going to have to give me a minute to try to pause recording. I'm sorry, I'm a one-woman show tonight because Celeste doesn't join our meeting. So, Jen, you made the motion, right? And
yes.
Meredith, you just seconded it, and it is.
I did.
Okay. So I think I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop recording on YouTube also because I always worry that somehow it might go there, even though. Okay. So I'm going to